Welcome to the Story in Your Head. Today I'm Ron Macklin, Deb Dendy, and Beatte Chelette. Did I pronounce it correctly?
You almost had it. It was Beatte Chelette. You just think
Chelette.
about, Chelette the
Chelette.
shaver,
Yeah.
but you just make it sound even better.
Okay, better. Got it. Thank you. So if you could you introduce yourself? Like, what is your why, and what are you up to?
Yeah, so my name is Beatte Chelette. I am known as the growth architect, and I work with visionaries and thought leaders who want to grow their authority and scale their impact. And my why is really to help mission-driven people that are here to make an impact, to move the world forward in whatever way they choose to, and help them build the systems, strategies, and workflows and processes, all the stuff that other people may be rolling their eyes because it's not the fun stuff, and help them to really build that backbone foundation of their business so they can scale the impact.
Got it. One of the things I noticed in your writings and in your podcast, you use the word strategy a lot. And if I could, so we're all on the same page and our listeners can be, how do you hold what a strategy is or how you use a strategy?
Strategy is probably the number one misunderstood thing or a big struggle that people have because there's so much information about this out there on. That's absolutely correct. So strategy is when you are determining where you want to go. I am going to explain this with an example. If you go to New York or Paris or London and you want to see one of the big landmarks, the Empire State Building, Big Ben, the Eiffel Tower, you go into the subway station or underground, and there's two things you look for. One is my starting point. You are here, typically the red dot, and then you're going to find your destination. And the strategy is how you're going to get from the starting point to your destination. So you can take multiple steps. You can walk, you can take a taxi, you can take a train, you can take the underground, you can take a bus, you can take a variety of different transportation vehicles to get to the desired destination. And so strategy is very much like that. The way we look at it is that you determine where we going, what's the business model that suits you, and then what is the mechanism, the pieces that we need to implement to actually get you to that destination. And then, obviously make adjustments along the way. So if it rains, you need your umbrella. And, if it's hot, you take your jacket off. It's cold, you put your jacket back on. So you have to be prepared that along the journey, you might get hungry. You need, to stop, get some food. So there's a bunch of different things that can happen while you are in transit or in, traveling your destination that will require you to make unexpected stops or adjustments or, maybe there's construction and that way doesn't work anymore. Now you have to find a different way. And so if you look at strategy really like a mechanism of transportation to get to your desired goal, then it's much easier to understand what strategy really is. And sometimes, people pick strategies that are the latest internet marketing idea. And they go, yeah, I've seen in the latest affiliate offer that I got from all the people that I follow that I now need to learn how to speak, but I break out in hives if I go on stage. But I'm going to conquer this because everybody tells me that's what I need to be doing. That's when we come in, we say, please don't do that. Unless you really consciously want to overcome a barrier or break through a limiting belief system, please, let's do things that are easy for you, where you can actually succeed. Because there's other ways to get your message out other than speaking on stage. You could be on a podcast like we are, right? We are reaching people. We are speaking. It's a much more relaxed atmosphere. So that's what we help people to figure out. It's like, where do you want to go? And what are the pieces that you need to get there?
Yeah, thank you. I sometimes see people in business say, I have this strategy. Like, this is the fixed strategy. And I really appreciated your description of when you get hungry or when there's construction, of how to adapt. And how do you help people adapt? Like, we talk a lot about the stories in our head, right? Like, how do you help those stories if someone's ingrained in a strategy or a plan that they're trying to implement? How do you help them adapt to those changes that are needed?
I like that angle, Deb. I think that I jokingly say people love change as long as it doesn't require them to change anything. Uh, they certainly love the idea. Yeah, we're gonna do it, and then and then it requires time or money because it'll always require time or money. And then they go like, well, I didn't realize if it was gonna change, they're gonna A, have to do things differently. B, it's gonna cost me time and money. That's not what I'm in it for. And then, people like us, we look at them and like, what were you exactly thinking? Is, if you get an additional degree, you're going to have to go to college, or you're going to have to do a program. It's going to cost you time and money. Why would it be any different in a business strategy if you want to go somewhere else that'll cost you time and money to figure these kinds of things out? So I have a very practical approach to that, Deb, where I think a lot of our job really is to say, how badly do you want it? What is the urgency? And the reality of it is, if it is not so painful and more painful to stay where you are, people tend to not change. So their fear of change has to be smaller than the pain of where they are right now. So that pain where they are at, that's why people always say people don't change until they hit rock bottom, because that usually is when the pressure and the pain is so compounded that they say anything but this. We, of course, as consultants and experts that help people, that are visionaries, thought leaders, we say, please don't do that. Let's not go with a wrecking ball and blow up your career, blow up your business, blow up your relationships. For you to make a change, there's a much better way, which is why smart people have coaches, because they help them to coach them through these limiting belief systems. So we are always up against limiting belief systems at every single step of our growth in the business. And people forget that. So they may look at me, I sold a business to Bill Gates, I had a multi-million-dollar exit, and they say, well, for her, that's easy. No, it isn't. I'm building a sales department now after much contemplation and with a lot of anxiety around that, because it's something that I know I need to do. It's something that I don't really know how to do that much, because in the previous business I had outsourced that to other people where our collection was sold through their systems. And so now suddenly I'm like, oh man, I'm going to have to put time and money in this. I don't really understand it entirely. It's a big learning curve. I know it's necessary. Of course there's fear. Of course there is anxiety. Of course there is, what the heck are you doing? Is it just better to just have a couple of clients? Or am I really committed to my vision to help visionaries and thought leaders to grow their authority and scale their impact? Because if my why, Ron, and this goes to your question earlier, and that's really what I want all your listeners to think about. If your why really is a big why, and mine is helping others scale their impact, that means unless they scale their impact, I'm not reaching my why. I'm failing at what I set out to do, which is why we connected it to my vision and mission to the one of our clients. So if I reach more people and I help more people to scale, now I'm reaching my why. Now I can say I have achieved what I set out to do. So that's in my opinion. I don't know what you guys think about this or what you are experiencing, but I definitely see that the fear of change is most likely what people are struggling with more than anything else. And then the fear of the unknown, and then the familiarity of what they know how to do. And they rather be in agony where they are at versus trying something. And that's why many people keep looping and looping and looping and looping and never really get anywhere.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think, so this, the fear of change, like I accept that people are afraid of changing. And I think it goes maybe for me a little deeper in that it's not just about the fear of change, it's the fear of being wrong. It's the fear of looking like a failure, like others see me as a failure.
Yes.
That I will remove all doubt that it's all my fault. And it like those are the ones that are down below that change thing. Because if I stay where I'm at, all that stuff stays hidden. Nobody's gonna
Oh
know.
man, you just put the finger right in the wound there, 100%. So I have a very, I have a quote, and that is that I failed my way to success. And I have a whole keynote around failing your way to success about a failure. So, when I open that talk, I always ask the audience, I said, who's ever made a mistake? Who's ever believed in the wrong people? Who's ever taken the wrong road? Who's ever wore an outfit that then was the wrong outfit? Or who's ever invested money in something that didn't work out? Literally every hand goes up. I said, you're all failures. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about what that really means, right? Because if you detach the meaning that you give that failure, right? So let's say in California, we've been having these massive atmospheric river storms. I mean, I think we are on number 12 and number 13 is right behind this. So if I forget my umbrella, yeah, I made a mistake. But what meaning do I give that mistake? Is it a catastrophic mistake? I got wet, I got sick. Or am I going to look at it and I'm like, well, note to self, just have the umbrella in the bloody car so that when you need it, it's no big deal, you'll learn. So it's just a question how I look at it, on whether I give it a catastrophic meaning or on whether I want to, interpret it as an opportunity for me to learn something. And another example I have about failure is if I go in my car and I drive with an outdated GPS, because let's face it, when the GPS said, you need to update me, you go like, I don't have time for this, I'm going to do next time. And it's a year later and it still like gives you the message that the navigation system needs to be updated. So now you're caught in construction, in a cul-de-sac, and the road that you used to take is no longer available. Now, would you get out of the car, throw yourself on the pavement, a full-on temper tantrum, and say, I will never ride my car again. I am such a failure. I can't believe I didn't update that. I must be punished in perpetuity. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me. I'm the worst driver in the world. I'm such an idiot for failing that. What you do is you go like, okay, next time don't wait a year to update the GPS. You wave at the construction man in the stop sign, say, thanks, dude, for letting me know not to take this way anymore. And you just go and find another way. So if I look at failure as the nice gentleman in his neon outfit with his little, warning stripe telling me with a stop sign, don't go here, then I have a choice to say, you jerk, or to say, thank you, now I know this is the wrong way. So which one's the most practical?
Yeah,
So
go ahead, Brad.
I just want to comment. The story sounds like a really like you knew a lot of detail about that story. So thank you. I made up that may be a real story. I think the next phase of that, even though like we could say, okay, thank you for doing that, and you're going down the road, it's how you view yourself after that or the next thing. So when you finally get to where you're going and you go, oh yeah, by the way, I'm a failure because I didn't update my GPS. Hey, let's get started. Right? Or do you go in and say, I learned, how long you can go without updating your GPS. And now you're learning and exciting and up versus you're shitting on yourself or weighting yourself down with this history of this load of I'm a failure.
You're absolutely correct. This is the meaning that you give it, the interpretation, and that is entirely up to us. I always find that two things, humor and curiosity, tend to work really well. Laugh it off if you can, shrug it off, but don't get attached to failures and don't give them any meaning, because it's just that. It's an exclusion of something that you now have figured out that doesn't work, so you now don't have to try that anymore, because it is clear that that's not right for you. That's it. Simple.
Yeah, I think so much about how the ego gets wrapped around failure, right? And we even learn it in school, right? Like if you're getting an F on your paper, you're a failure. Versus, what did I learn?
You know what? But
And
that's the whole system, Deb. That's the entire way the educational system is set up. It's set up to learn existing information, regurgitate existing information, and if you're good at both, you're going to get good grades. And that's your entire life until you get out of school. And then you get into a job or you set up your own business. And then somebody says to you, so what makes you so different? What are you going to do that's really going to drive this thing forward? And you say, where's the information that I can learn and regurgitate and get an A?
Alone. We're going to learn it, regurgitate
alone.
it alone.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to work together as a team because that's illegal in school, right? So we're going to everything we can to make sure that we don't collaborate because that's the requirement.
And so to your point, Deb, that's exactly right, because that's how we are programmed. That is our original programming, that because we believe that the information that they have is the right information. But then if you watch National Geographic or any of, the History Channel, and you realize that as we're now uncovering more about Pompeii and more dinosaur bones are being found now that certain glaciers are melting, they actually have to revise some of the information that they told us was true. Gasp, shock, disbelief. What are we going to do with that? Why? Because nobody's ever challenged it. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I accept. Moving from we're programmed, our initial programming was a certain way, which doesn't work in life, right? To be competitive, to learn, to memorize something and take a test. We also can make up a story that there's something wrong with me that I'm afraid. And there's something wrong with me because I don't see anybody else is ever afraid. I've been looking at Facebook pages and, what was the first one? MySpace, right? Look at MySpace page.
Oh my God,
yeah,
MySpace.
MySpace, Facebook, LinkedIn. I mean, who's on LinkedIn saying this? Yeah, well, I failed over here, and I lost $1 billion over there, and I lost $1 million. Right? Nobody's saying that. Everybody goes, look at all my accomplishments. How good I look.
Mm-hmm.
And that could easily form our own story that everybody else looks so perfect, and I am just afraid. In my book, Happy Woman, Happy World, I talk about that. I call this the superhuman paradox. And it goes something like this. So I look at Deb and I'm going like, Deb just got this, her hair looks just absolutely amazing, right? Ron is just so good at being a host and whatever, let's say technology. And then my friend Kelly, she just got the money thing figured out. So I look at everybody I know and I see only the thing that they shine in. And then I look at myself and I go, well, my hair is a little frizzy here today. I had technical difficulties. I have a leak. Water's leaking down into my podcast setup. So I go, it's like, well, my expectation now, my superhuman paradox is now I think I need to be the best of everyone I know accumulated. All in one person combined. Yes. Yep.
And that is the way to drive yourself crazy.
Yeah. It is a way to drive yourself crazy. I accept. What we work with, part of our philosophy, is to ask questions like this. Well, what's the other person afraid of? What are their fears?
That's an interesting way. I like that.
Because if we think that we're all screwed up because we're afraid and we don't think anybody else is afraid, man, the world looks tough.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in a space where you go, no, we're all afraid. We all have our fears, right? And we put our shields up to protect ourselves, like LinkedIn, MySpace, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest. We can go through a whole list of stuff to make ourselves look good. But in reality, we all are afraid. And it really connects us. We can hold that we all have fears.
I love that. Yeah, and I want to add to that, unless you feel fear, you don't need courage. So,
It's very true.
Yeah.
because if you don't have anything to overcome, you don't need courage. The story of courage is always the person who, against all odds, set out with an idea, and everything always started with an idea. And the other thing I want to maybe bring in is to say, it very rarely is that the story is being told of greatness by any of our thought leaders, is that they woke up, they were born, they were brilliant, great things happened, even better things happened. One day they became a prince, and then one day somebody says, hey, you want to be king? And then they were handed the entire kingdom, and they lived happily ever after, found the right partner, had amazing kids, nothing ever went wrong. That's the most boring story in the world. Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I accept.
It can almost look like it on social media, though. It
Yeah.
can almost look
It
like
does.
that.
Yeah, no, I want
It does.
to bring up the Finding Joe, and it's about the hero's journey. And the stories that we love, like the ones that pull us in, right, is about a hero's journey. All great stories have the hero's journey. And there's always the dark forest. There's always that space where it looks like it's not going to work. And that almost failing and then going back and trying again pulls us in. So the fact that we all have to go through our challenges, our fears and all that, that's just part of being human. We love that. We are that. Yet we think
I like the
everybody
yeah,
else
I like that.
everybody else like has this
Yep.
perfect easy life.
Yeah. And then you find out, that their parent died when they were 5 years old, and that they were on food stamps, and that they grew up in the tough neighborhood. So I think that many of the healers or the thought leaders of our times are people that have been put through a lot of hardship. I sometimes think this is God's way to activate you, because unless you know where people are at, how can you activate to find solutions to, I don't want to say the suffering, that sounds like kind of like very religious, but how can you come up with solutions to help people if you don't understand what they're going through? So in order for you to really truly relate, you have to have a certain level of expertise of the problem that you're trying to solve, because that creates the connection, the authenticity, even though it's a very overused word right now, but the being real about something that people say, you know what, I believe you because you were a single broke mom, you had $135,000 in debt, an alcoholic ex-husband, a mother that abused you. I believe that if you can do that, and I look at my situation, there's now hope for me, because if you got out on the other end, maybe I can do the same thing. I think that's really our job. That's why we need to show our vulnerabilities and tell the stories, and not make the stories prettier than they are, because it's called the messy middle for a reason. It is incredibly messy.
When I
Go ahead, Deb.
when I read your book, I kept thinking about that ad back from the 70s about like being a woman. I can bring home the bacon and fry it up in a pan and not let anything look like I have any chinks in my armor, right? I'm expected to do everything and everything well. And you're kind of flipping that on its end in the area of needing help and being vulnerable and asking for help from others.
Exactly.
How did that story have to change for you?
I think it was, in my book I write about this. There was a friend that I had been in a mastermind with, and I was writing the book, and there was like a moment where I was really struggling, and whatever, writer's block, whatever you want to call it, but I was having a complete, utter meltdown. And so the next day he comes and he gives me like this method that he had researched, and proceeds to tell me what I needed to do to get through this. And my first reaction to this was like, how dare you tell me what to do? And then I had to take it a step back. I'm going like, oh my God, he's trying to be the prince in shining armor and rescuing a damsel in distress, which is what he heard. And so if I shift my perspective or my perception away from what is it, the meaning that I give it, to what is the intention of the other person, and I really say, why are you doing this? It's like, well, you were so distraught yesterday. I sat here until 3:00 in the morning doing all kinds of research. This is the best of what I found to help you to break through whatever it is. Now it's a completely different meaning. Then some jerk was telling me what to do. Now it's somebody who spend hours of their own time trying to figure out something that they can help me to break through a barrier that I was at. And that really shifted this for me to say, what else am I not seeing in my life? Where else am I mistake the helping hand as a poking stick? And where else am I not, is my reaction to what somebody's bringing to me really the problem that creates the friction? Can I look at this from an intention of something other than hurt me? Because that was the story in my head. Because that's my mom. That's my upbringing. That is my trauma, right? Don't trust anybody, even if they're nice today. That can change by tonight. Next thing you know, you have somebody hammering on your door. Open the door. And then you're going to get a beating. If you open the door, which I didn't. But if I detach myself from the old story in my head and say, well, that guy isn't going to come over and he's not going to knock on my door. He's not going to want to beat me up if I don't listen to him. He's somebody who's genuinely trying to help me. Then that's really on me. Now I'm making that story. I'm making that story the problem that I continue to believe in, that everybody's like that, and it's just not true. So that for me, Deb, was the beginning of the unraveling of that part, that I say, maybe I'm fighting too much because I'm so comfortable with fighting and I'm so used to fighting that I wouldn't even know what it was like if I didn't have to do that. And that's how I started to stop. I'm like, what if they're helping? What if I can ask for help? What if there's other people that are better at something than I am? Could I build better teams if I bring in people that have a skill set that I don't have? And then you go, well, of course, logically, of course. But in the moment, you just kind of can't see that. So that was how the whole thing started to really shift and say, do I really need to do this? And that's the question today that I'm asking myself as I'm building up my sales process and sales team, where I'm like, do I love it? No. Am I good at the follow-up? No. What am I really good at? Being in front of people, talking, getting the message out, big picture. I'm not even that good in the detail stuff. I mean, I'm good with setting everything up and making sure all the details are taken care of. But then I have my team that actually populates everything. And then I'm like, well, isn't that a much better life if I can own who I am? And I think that's really the story I would like to really share with your audience today. Is like, if you were to look at the best attributes of yourself, and I'll give you the pedestal, and you have permission from all of us to now step on that pedestal and tell the world what you're really freaking brilliant at. And then for everything else, you're going to find somebody who can do that for you. What would that change?
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. And this was the perfect story in your head podcast conversation, because we have the stories that we make up in our heads without us choosing them. They just happen. Our body, our mind creates these stories, right? And this show, the podcast whole purpose is to be able to notice that, hey, we just made up a story. Do we like that story? Is that the story I want? Or is this a story I can create differently than that? Not to say, well, if I made it up, it must be real. No, you just made it up. Just a story in your head. How do you keep crafting that story?
If I made it up, it must be real?
Yeah, right.
Like when you say it, I'm like laughing. I'm like, well, no.
But it can occur that way.
Mhm.
Well, it is real to us. It's not
Yes.
real in the world. It's our reality until we say, is that the reality I choose?
I like that.
Is that where I want to go? And that's why we have this podcast. Beatte,
Love it.
how could people get a hold of you or anything else you want to say
Yes,
to our audience?
Yes. So first of all, if you have listened to this podcast or watched it, please make sure that you go to wherever you pick up this podcast, the story in your head, and give Bron and Deb a 5-star review with a comment referring to something that you heard that really resonated with you, because this is a labor of love, and that makes us as podcast guests and hosts feel good if we get the feedback from you. And if you heard something where you say, I need to talk to this woman, you can look me up all over social media under Beatte Chelette or The Growth Architect, and just reach out and send me a notice. I'll be more than happy to see if there's something I can assist you with. So if you're looking for systems and strategies, you want to grow your authority, reach out, or just take our quiz, our growthblockerquiz.com, where you can find out what the number one thing is that is in your way, the growth blocker that is in your way to build your business.
Great. Beatte, thank you very much for being on the show. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to the next time we talk.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.